So after weeks of perpetual awkwardness in the 2024 race as to whether or not we're going to see the lead competitors, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, actually compete one versus one in a presidential debate, we have some confirmations from one camp that will actually alleviate concerns about this. And let's cover how this affects the election. So we're going to get it right from the horse's mouth from CNN, just so that we're in the trenches together. Now, I did see the hour and 15-minute speech he had at Mar-a-Lago where he expounded upon the details. But just to give you the sticky note, sort of spark notes here, the next debate is set, okay? Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are set to debate on ABC on September 10th after the former president said Thursday he had agreed to a face-off along with two others in the next month after that in September, okay? So mind you, there was a September 4th Fox News debate that Donald Trump wanted to have, but Kamala has not consented yet. What they both could agree on, and they already have, is on the ABC News debate. Obviously, the ABC News debate is going to be slanted against Donald Trump, but actually the, I think, CNN debate that they had, Trump and Biden, was not as biased as you would have expected it to be. And so I think Donald Trump is saying, okay, well, look, between not having fair debate and just having one in general, he would just take the debate possibility because he's confident in his capacity. This election result right now is coming down to less than 10 swing states. Truth is that while prior hand, right after that debate shellacking that Biden gave himself a few months ago, you saw that Virginia, New Mexico, etc. were in question. Nowadays, states like New Jersey, New York, they're not going to be that close. Closer maybe than prior, than the last 10 years, sure, but it doesn't really mean they're going to be difficult for Kamala to win. And so for that reason, I think Kamala is really dealing with a few states here. And so right now we have 221 electoral votes for Harris-Walz, and we have 219 for Trump-Vance. Now, as of right now, you could really say, based on the polling, that Kamala is in a way stronger position than is Joe Biden. That being said, much stronger than a guy who is guaranteed to lose is not really the best look. And so we need to see what polling and stats we can really ascertain as to why this race might really shift hugely after these debates happen. As you guys can see here, you'll notice that obviously Kamala Harris is leading right now in the race when it comes down to popular vote percentage, but this is liable to change due to the debates. Again, there's one guaranteed down the chamber in about a month on September 10th on ABC News, but there's another two that could possibly happen, whether that be the one with the week before on Fox News. If Kamala has the balls to do that, she's a woman, but maybe she might venture and say, well, you know what, I can really prosecute the case against Donald. I doubt it. But there could also be more liberally ran debates afterwards. Think about it. Now, moving on to the actual electoral prospect, well, obviously, again, Kamala's winning the popular vote. If a Democrat wins it by 0.5, it doesn't mean that they're likely to win. In fact, you saw in the year 2000, George Bush lost the popular vote, technically won Florida, and therefore the general election result. And so for that being said, obviously the conservative vote will be more interspersed between the rural states, which is favored by the Electoral College. And so if a Democrat is winning by a few points in the popular vote, it does not mean at all that they're likely to win. In fact, Hillary Clinton won by over 2% and then went on to lose in surprising fashion to many folks in 2016. And so for Harris to be up by 0.5 really means nothing. That being said, though, again, this is liable to change. Let's look into the key mitigating factors as to what could happen after a debate performance, whether it be good or bad for either person. Now, looking back into the history of the presidential debates, we had in 2020 a scenario where Donald Trump was in this awkward position where he had been dealing with this epidemic, and so this was a horrible thing for his presidency overall when it comes to polling. That being said, he agreed to 2 or 3 debates. I think they went for 3, but Joe only wanted 2. Obviously, he was already pretty old then. And so God forbid you actually saw him 4 years later and you saw, oh my God, he had an ice cream cone that was dripping, but this time it was just completely flat, plain, almost like a molasses, just disgusting melted mess. Now, when it comes down to it, Donald Trump was perceived in the first debate to have lost, like a 6-4, not a horrible blowout, but it came off as if Donald Trump was overcompensating and that Joe was like the chill older uncle you have. Whereas in the second debate, Donald Trump actually calmed himself down and kind of reanalyze what went wrong in the first place and then let Joe Biden stumble upon himself. And then he ended up winning the debate again, 6-4, not a complete blowout for Joe, but people just thought that Trump generally won. Did that make Trump win the 2020 election? As of the final count officially, obviously I disagree with it, but basically Donald Trump lost. And so the point being is that, these debates do have somewhat of a factor here. And so, like, if Donald Trump actually won that first debate and won all two, then he probably would have won the election outright without any sort of counting being an issue. That being said, because there was a stumble, it caused a different butterfly effect to occur in history. That being said, when we move on now to 2024, we saw that Joe Biden completely fumbled against Trump because, much like that second debate in 20, he was allowed the rope to hang himself, and it seemed like he quadruple laced it around his neck because it became a horrible presentation for the American people. And even looking at the statistics after that polling, you'll notice that again, Trump widened his lead over Biden's debate debacle. In fact, a New York Times or CNN poll finding showed that Donald Trump was ahead of Biden by 6 percentage points among the likely voters after a new national survey, and overall 74% of voters thought that Biden was too old for the job. Okay, so Trump won that debate 2-3. Okay, a huge margin of victory. And that obviously made it so that Joe Biden went from the nominee who would have coasted Weekend at Bernie style into at least being on the ballot in November. He did so bad that they had to take him out. It's like if you shat yourself during a date, you're not even gonna apologize. You're just gonna text her hey, I had to go, and then walk away because it's too disgusting. And so that's ostensibly what had happened. But enough talk about Joe Biden. Let's get to Kamala. Now, I think Kamala is interesting because she does have debate experience. There's actually plenty of sample material here. She's never confronted Donald Trump, not even a single time. Have they even met before? I doubt it. The point being is that clearly we can look at past instances of her debate record and see whether or not she would hold up against Donald Trump just really quick. I'll do more of this coverage in the following month, obviously, as we get closer to the timeline. That being said, we're just going to take a preliminary skim through it as I want to respect your time. So like the video if you want to see it. Now, basically, to move on here, she debated Mike Pence as recently as less than 4 years ago even. And by all means, Pence won that debate. And to look into the statistics for this, let's go ahead and look into it. Okay, so who ended up winning this? Just as a matter of fact, because again, I'm conservative, so I have a bias. That being said, when it came down to how likely are you to vote for each candidate, it seemed about even. But so looking at the statistics for this scenario, actually, I'm surprised I read this for the first time. Apparently, Harris did 9% better than Pence did over who did better in the debate policy-wise and just in general, which is actually kind of surprising. Again, the needle did not move at all in regards to how that affected the election. That being said, it does seem like she did hold her ground polling-wise, which, again, from when I saw this in high school, I had the opposite opinion. It came off as if Mike Pence was kind of relaxed and Harris was being kind of snarky and stupid. But again, that's my bias showing. Apparently, according to the polls, it seems pretty steady. You see, when it came to favorability and popularity, basically, you saw that Pence was at a -15 prior to the debate, whereas after the debate, he was at a -14. So he did a little better there. Kamala went from a +5 to a +10. And so that's interesting. So you can contrast that in a major way because obviously it's not really a good example. While this might be the most recent example of a debate head-on-head that we can get of Kamala, the truth is that Pence is a completely different beast. And I would say maybe more like a rabbit compared to Donald Trump. Okay, so Donald Trump is a lot more aggressive, a lot more intimidating than Mike Pence, a lot less likable maybe, but the likability of Pence is very tacit and very lame, okay? You might like Mike Pence how you like your babysitter just fine enough, but when you grow up, you say, okay, this is lame. Point being, though, is of course, Mike Pence did not beat Kamala according to those polls. And if you even remember in the infancy of TikTok, you would recall that the main thing that young people saw back then that ended up voting for Harris and Biden was that the guy had a fly on his head. And so maybe that would have been a bigger Judas in this in that prospect rather than any sort of debate performance by either person. Either way, you can see the sort of debate style she has. Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. So again, it's like this boss babe or boss mommy. I don't know what you call it. Boss woman, kind of a brat, some would say, sort of material, kind of like quotables that she'll pull out of nowhere, the cackling, the sort of nervous laughing she does, that's very accented in her personality, stuff like this. How would that hold up in a debate against Trump is anybody's guess. My basic assumption is that it'll be somewhat like, basically it's a I would say just a bias sort of perception. What I mean is that people that are Trump voters are going to walk into this debate saying, wow, Kamala is so annoying, she's an idiot, God, she sucks. And then the Democrats will come in and say, wow, Trump is such an arrogant a-hole. Oh, I hate this guy. Oh, Kamala, you tell him, girl. That's what they're going to be thinking. But what we're concerned about, obviously, is the independent voter. The person that went from Trump in 2016 in Pennsylvania to Biden 2020. These people tacitly also voted for Harris. Not so much because of her. In fact, basically nobody voted for her in 2020, but more so just because they hated Trump. I think that is the basic prognosis here. And so what I think Donald Trump needs to do actually is not so much cut her down like a coconut tree, but instead really think about what makes her unlikable and just let that play out. Much like Joe Biden, just let them hang themselves rhetorically, like Robin Williams, but much less likable. In fact, it's a more tragic of a fate. That being said, of course, Kamala Harris is somebody who does not really appeal to the independent worker or independent voter for that matter. And so I think that's the basic premise Donald Trump needs to follow. Now, will he actually do it? I'm 50-50. On one hand, obviously Donald Trump knows what to do in that situation. He controlled himself against Joe Biden to not interrupt him or anything. That being said, though, with Kamala, she might actually get under her skin a little bit because Trump knew that Biden had these mental issues. And so he's like, okay, I'm going to let him screw himself over. With Kamala, he doesn't have that. He's just going to be like, wow, God, this chick is so annoying. And he might want to jump in, but that's fool's gold. Okay, do not do that. Do not do that. Worst case scenario for Kamala is that she'll just be like cackling nervously because she got felted or something. I mean, it really wouldn't be this huge conundrum for her because her 40% of the country will back her no matter what. That being said, again, it's about the middle. Will Donald Trump be able to control the middle? That's the big operative question here. All right, so this is some extra credit content, so like the video if you want more of this. But let's look into 2020. Again, I'm going to do a bigger, deeper, more extravagant deep dive into this whole primary 2020 dynamic. But you know, in the future. But for now, I'm going to give you a few minutes of a teaser, okay? So this is from the inside story of the Biden-Harris debate blow-up. So if you recall, in 2020, the entire primary was in flux the entire time. But Obama didn't want to really pick a horse, even though we had clear favorites, kind of like a parent with a child. They want to hide the favorite. That being said, Kamala was somebody of low personal record. What I mean is that she was not very popular. The name ID was not something she would pull up to an officer because nobody knew who she was, if that makes sense. So anyway, Kamala made a name for herself, though, by attacking Biden, who was one of the lead horsemen in this race, by saying, you know what, I'm going to imply you're a racist. I'm going to talk about how, like, 50 years ago, I may have been bused due to segregation laws, again, 50 years ago for a few years, not mentioning that she grew up in Canada for a lot. And so you might think Drake was running for president, but it's a different biracial. It's Kamala. And Kamala made her name, like I said, just attacking Joe over implications of him working with racist people. So you can see how HR, how negative, how naggy she can be. I mean, this is like pulling up a DUI you had 15 years ago, okay? It's just kind of like beside the point. But anyhow, Joe, back when he had his natural hair, not that it looked good at all back then, you know, apparently worked with segregationists and he would brag about it. Now, again, I'm going to give you a slight teaser, just a little teaser as to what I'm going to go into.
President Biden, we're going to get to you. Hang on, we're going to get to you.
Stage, I would like to speak on the issue of race.
You can see how, like, again, I'm biased. I'm just telling you right now. I have a Trump flag right behind me, okay? Or I guess behind the camera. Look, I'm biased, but she is so she is so annoying. I'm gonna talk about race. I'm gonna talk about race, dude. Jesus Christ, man.
Harris,
and so what I will say is that
if I could preface this, we will give you 30 seconds of this. We're going to come back to you on this again in just a moment. Go for 30 seconds.
Okay. So on the
Oh, dude, I hate her so. I'm sorry. I'm just telling you. I'm just coming out the closet. Okay, she is so annoying. You have 30 seconds. As if to say, like, what? You deserve more? What? Suffer.
Issue of race. I couldn't agree more that this is an issue that is still not being talked about truthfully and honestly. Growing up, my sister and I had to deal with the neighbor who told us her parents couldn't play with us because we were black. And I will say also that in this campaign, we've also heard, and I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden, I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me. I was part of the second class.
Okay, I think you got a taste of what happened there. So this was literally her peak debate performance in her entire life. If you want to think, wow, that was such a limp-wristed, passive-aggressive, HR, horrible Karen sort of diatribe, I completely agree with you. Now, apparently this got people's rocks off in the Democratic debate stage like 5 years ago, and she actually blew up in the polls at double digits. That's so good. Anyway, so yeah, so she went viral for, what was it, 2 weeks maybe, and then she fell down. A lesser impact on the primary than Ben Carson did like 10 years ago for the Republicans. So that kind of puts it into scale, and we love Ben Carson, but the point is like, flash in the pan, is totally what it was. But anyhow, you can see her angle about how Joe, you're not even racist, but like you said something kind of nice about somebody 50 years ago that was racist, and you supported the policy that I think is racist, and you actually did support that too, but I'm not going to use that against you, Joe, because you might pick me as vice president, Joe, so I'm not going to actually call you out for it, even though logically that precedes the whole case to begin with, Joe, and I'm a prosecutor, Joe, so actually I should have known that, Joe, but maybe I'm just a liar, Joe, but can you pick me to be vice president, Joe, and then when you're weak, can I actually supplant you and stab you in the back to be the nominee, Joe? And yeah, that's basically how it went down. So anyway, pretty good ending for the video. I'll just give you the last, I'm going to give you my prediction as of right now. I think Trump will win these states. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Harris Walls, District 2 of around Omaha, Nebraska. You have New Hampshire also going blue. There you go. Okay, so 312 to 226. My opinion hasn't changed. The debates could totally make a change, though, so we'll see how that impacts it. So anyway, like the video if you haven't liked it. If you haven't already, I've been putting my whole heart into this, please. Anyhow, also subscribe, too. I mean, come on. Get me to whatever number you'd like. Okay, so subscribe now, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Adios.